Welcome to Networking Unleashed, Building Profitable Connections. Welcome to the show, folks. I'm your host, Michael Forman, and you're listening to the podcast where networking is more than just an awkward handshake and bad coffee. It's an art and a talent. But here's the twist, it's an art and a talent you can actually learn. You even Yes, even if you're the person hiding in the corner at every event pretending to check emails. Networking isn't just a nice skill to have, it's a game changer. When you get good at it, you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. More connections, more opportunities, more profits. It's like unlocking a cheat code for life. So, whether you're the life of the party or the let me just stay in home and text type, we've got something for you. Stick around and let's turn those awkward small talk moments into big wins. Now, I have a guest. Her name is Nili Goldberg, and she has quite a great background in network and influencing and everything. I wouldn't do it justice. Let me just start out by saying Nili Goldberg is a values expert, an entrepreneur, and now a published nonfiction business author. She launched her first startup in 2009. So before I go into the rest of the bio, I will say hello to Nili. Hello, Nili. How are you?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me. Good morning
You,
on your end, of course.
yeah, well, it is morning. It is morning. But I know there's just so much more to your background. And could you fill us in a little bit, please?
Sure thing. I began my entrepreneurial career, as you mentioned, while sitting at the office listening to other startup pitch about their video solutions to me. And suddenly I had the entrepreneurial itch. And so ever since, I've been connecting my passion for marketing and entrepreneurship. First was, as you mentioned, to launch one of the first influencer platforms on earth before even Instagram was on. So that was a bit of a challenge. Trailblazing the social influencer, the micro social influencer markets. And ever since, so for the past decade or so, I've been also investing and working with startups that some have now IPO'd on NASDAQ by now. So I'm very proud in order to help them fine tune their product market fit. It was with the pitch. That's how it got all combined. And especially to help them overcome what I saw is that they used to call me the messaging doctor, but as we dove into the messaging processes, it ended up being really a kind of alignment that got me to sit on the beach for a year and write this book, your Core Four, which I'm so proud of and excited about.
You should be. And congratulations on the book. That is just a very good thing. Okay, so you network, you have an incredible network of people that you stay in contact with. So now how do you remain in contact or network with these people in a digital age?
Wow, that's a great question. And I will also add something to my bio that wouldn't have been relevant until this point, but that is the fact that I only found out that I have ADHD about 3 years ago. That's a year before I decided to write a book. And which helped me understand why, while I have many friends and acquaintances whom I love, when I connect with them, it's always extremely authentic. We dive deep either on the personal or business level. We always find various connections to what we do and how we do it. You know, we find our whys, we find our why we're connected. But then given the widespread of communities that I'm involved in, given the various startup verticals that I've been engaging with, and the academic world, and it became very hard for me to maintain that level of connection on social media, because to get back to messages and to create connections that are there to last, I found I needed something different. I needed to have that kind of connection that if you and I are not going to speak together, we're going to go off this call and then follow up a few times, but then we'll all, we'll disappear into thin digital air. So what I keep looking for in my engagements on social media is to have the type of connection that when I meet these people again, because it's hard for me to maintain the personal contact in the deep way it was formed before, but it will feel for us as if we've just said our previous goodbyes, and that the mutual connection, it'll just like you have these friends that you pick up your connection with them, even if you haven't seen them for a decade. And it's like as if you just said your goodbyes, and that's the kind of engagements I seek on social media.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I profess, the in-person, the networking, so you can feel the vibe of the person and feel the vibe of the room. What type of networking, in-person networking events do you attend?
Well, it's interesting for me, these kind of questions, on one hand, they're like, okay, so I go to meetups, like I go to, and when I get invited as a speaker, so I get so excited to see the event itself and everything else. So you get to spend time with people. On the other hand, it's, for me, it's like what Brene Brown refers to, the introvert or extrovert, and vice versa. So I'm, as much as I'm very passionate about what I do and about helping people, and I dive in, and it's like I morph myself into being part of the room in order to better understand the challenges I'm dealing with. I shy away in other events. So, what kind of networking events I go to? The ones that there's a bar? No. The ones that, no, it's not my thing, but the ones that I can blend in and not feel uncomfortable with, not approaching people and saying, hi, my name is Neely, how are you? I noticed, what you do. That, and I like the small and more intimate events and meetups that eventually either have breakdown sessions or roundtables, and then I think that's a true way to get to know people. So those are the events I would vote for.
Okay. Okay. How about if you give me a few key elements on key elements of effective communication in your professional network? Just some key elements.
What I would I think that my key element for engaging on the professional level is not very different from the one on the personal level, because what I usually aim for is to have, I've been working for so many years that I prefer, only good conversations over just conversations. So a good one would be, or an engagement would be on the basis of core values. Which
Okay.
means that if you and I connect and engage and we had a few minutes to talk beforehand, I was able to connect with you on a level of the empathy, of the fact that both of us, it wasn't just the small talk of making it our business to feel comfortable with each other. It's the fact that we found the way to show each other we know each other, that we get it. We get a specific experience or feeling, or it was even a tiny bit of, not anxiety, but anxiousness, and looking forward and being very curious about every one of us on two sides of the world about what's going to happen. We do take note of the global effects that are currently taking place on various levels. So that is why I feel that, in addition to the world of communication, of course, I felt that I was very much at ease to talk to you and to dive into a podcast, being the introvert.
Okay. Okay. Well, here we go. Now, since you said that you were an introvert, all right, how would you recommend people overcoming a fear or discomfort about networking?
Take a friend.
Okay.
But
It, it,
that truly is because the conversation, it's like, to me, the way to overcome the anxiety is to make it less about me.
okay.
And in that field, everything is, any tool that I have is relevant. So it's either I will introduce someone else into the crowd, or I will create a discussion about, like, blend into a discussion about something else. So if I fear the situation of introducing myself and putting myself out there, I will find ways to create an engagement that puts myself out there next. Or it's like, oh, right, so you ski, you do this, you used to windsurf. Oh, you wrote a book.
Right, right. Well, it's funny you say that because listen, I was in the Air Force, so I call this a wingman. But
Exactly.
when I'm up on a stage or doing a workshop or something like that, I am always asked the difference between extroverts and introverts. And everything
Right.
we talk about is about an extrovert, nothing about an introvert. So,
True.
my main thing with an introvert is listen, let me back up. With an extrovert, I always say go alone. This way you don't have to share your attention span with anybody else. When you're an introvert, however, it's you bring a wingman, somebody that knows you, that you trust, and that can introduce you to every table and everything else. And of course, that just makes things easier. So you're right in line with what I have been talking about. So that's very, very good.
You know that we
Um,
could also add, given your experience at the Air Force, my experience is in the intelligence force. So the more we do our homework, and again, to me, it's to get more of the experience, the vibe of who are the people that I'm meeting and what kind of event I'm going to. It helps me better set myself in advance to the vibe that I would like to be in, to put myself in the setting that is best for me for that kind of an event and for the people I meet. So even if it's a networking event and you've been to a gazillion of them, it's, the better, the more you're prepared, the more you're going to ace it. And if there's a specific target, then by all means, there's that movie on Apple TV with WeWork, We Crashed, of
right,
of
right.
how of how the entrepreneur got the funding round from the Asian parties, like the
Well,
second, exactly like that.
knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So if you're going to go to a networking event, you're going to investigate all about that event, not only the event itself, but the people that go to that event, because you have to see whether or not it's for you. Are you one of those people that are going to go to that event? And you're right, when you walk into the room and you pick up the vibe of the room, that's so important. Now, when I do anything, my wife absolutely goes crazy about this, but I do that everywhere we go. I always have my back to the wall, everything, because I was a police officer with the Air Force. I'm always armed. So, it's always, that's the way my brain works. But you have to pick up the vibe of the person you're speaking to and the vibe of the room for it to work out. Okay, so what would you say is a mistake that you made in networking and how did you overcome
Oh, I make so many.
it? That's usually the answer, but let's try to narrow it down
No,
a
it's
little
like
bit.
sometimes I'm like, did you just say that? Are you like,
It's
I think that one of the mistakes I made a few times was the understanding of the follow-up process. Because on the networking front, you hit and miss, and then you come back for round two, three, four, if that's what's needed. You pick yourself up and try again. But when you leave the room, or by the way, a Zoom call or a live call, it's crucial to follow up in a certain way. And in a way that, as I said previously, creates it continues the vibe of the previous engagement, which requires a lot of time and attention, by the way. So, and there's that kind of cycle. After a networking event, there's like the hype. And then it maintains for a day to 5 days, and then you start, spreading the follow-ups and mutual connections that you've promised to create. But then there is that continuous follow-up of living up to your promise and then some, because otherwise it's transactional, and then I make my business to give value. It's important to me, so I'm on the lookout for that.
It should be. And over delivering is the key. The follow up, I feel, is almost more important than actually meeting the person. So I have a secret sauce for follow up, and for 2 weeks after, and I find out A, whether or not you're really interested, or B, it's fluff. Okay. And it's all right if you weren't really interested in what I had to say or have to offer, because I'll put you on a drip campaign within my CRM and everything else. But with that follow up, it's very, very important that you follow through with your follow up. And what you said is very important. You have to make good on what you promise,
For
because
sure.
listen, know you, like you, trust you, then they'll do business with you. And know you and like you, that's really the easy part, because everybody knows you, but like you, well, that narrows down the field a little bit. And trust you, you have 5 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 10 minutes, a half hour. You don't know what you have for them to trust you. So when you walk up to somebody and you're letting them talk, their level of trust is increasing and that barrier between you is decreasing. Okay, so I just mentioned that trust is crucial. How do you establish and maintain authentic relationships with fellow professionals?
I say what many of the relationships I have are either with founders or investors in either private equity or VCs. So the level of trust I have to maintain is extremely, it's very high up there, because they tell me about challenges that they're facing with their portfolio or a specific company, and I help them. Or the reason they're either chatting with me at an event or following up is because they would like to get a second opinion on what may really be taking place there. And then because based on the core four, there may be misalignment inside the company between the vision and the core values, or the core values and the mission or the promise. And therefore I've gained their trust by being pretty accurate. But they would also ask me about companies, about, whether when they're contemplating investment rounds or changes in the board or the leadership teams. That's one hand. Or they call me in as the doctor to help, and then I need to gain trust from the CEO and the leadership team, because they bring me into their temple. They take me on an offsite that is a leadership offsite, and there has to be a very, very, very strong element of trust, because first of all, no one is allowed to prep for the offsite, as opposed to any other offsite in the world. No one's, you don't prepare your decks in advance, and then because then it gets everybody biased and defensive, and you go nowhere there if you really want to solve a business strategic issue, not just a cultural, kumbaya kind of thing.
Okay.
So I need to live up to my promises. They trust me to say what I think, and that to know that it's in their favor. So if it's not a win-win, they know I'll say it.
That's great. That's a great answer, by the way. Okay, so give me some common challenges that you would face, and how would you overcome them, or how did you overcome them?
Are we talking networking, or are we talking business
Let's
challenges?
let's stick with networking.
Okay. So it's I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of something, but eventually the challenge I always have is approaching people.
Well,
And my
that's
challenge is always, as much as, again, it's very personal, but it is putting myself out there. So it's like I'm the entrepreneur who always creates a product, and then, as many in Silicon Valley say, if you've launched a product you're proud of, it means you've launched too late. So I have a gazillion products, just like I wrote the book, and I have tons of workshops that I've created and launched and worked with them, but I never put myself out there saying, hey, this is my whole portfolio and this is my umbrella, because then I would feel, with given my Russian background, that I'm chasing some, you don't chase, and that it's, as opposed to the American culture, that it's like, I'll put myself out there,
yeah.
no worries. So that is a continuous challenge for me. And as I shared before, then I either have my wingman or my surfer dude in my case. I love engagements with students, so I teach a lot. And again, I stopped making promises that would exhaust me to live up to.
Okay. That's all right. All right. So let's bring this full circle and give me your favorite marketing tactic. These weren't really hard questions, I want to tell you.
So I am a very, very, very strong believer in cherry picking. And it doesn't matter whether you have, you have 100 service slots to sell in a quarter, or 10 partners or customers that you would like to serve, given service businesses or product businesses, that is very scalable as opposed to the service businesses. So that's a lot of customers. I believe that the best way to get your customers is just like in, as we spoken before, an like a campaign. Like if you're running for president, you're running for office, you got to shake a lot of hands. No more hugging a lot of babies, but you
You're
got to
right,
shake.
right, right.
Now, the any marketing tactic I use is, like, even if I need to approach 100,000 people, I will always start with my hit list, with it, which is my 30 preferred customers, or the people I would like to serve, as now with the accelerator, the Core 4 accelerator that we're launching. So I create that hit list of 30, of 100, and then I test that audience, or sometimes I have a few of them, in order to crystallize the promise I give them, being able to deliver, by the way, product and service alike. So testing the audiences, but in a way that you really know those people, that if I ask my team, who is John Solomon, they're going to tell me exactly who he is, not just because they're going to go into the CRM and see the details, but rather they've been on his Facebook profile, on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, LinkedIn, depending on the target audience. But that, to me, is, if I had to choose one, it would bring me back to the intelligence force.
Okay. Okay. Kind of close to your heart. Okay.
You make those clusters, and then you can really reach a wide audience, because you've already lived up to your promise. You know you can keep it, then you grow.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that goes back to keeping your promise and keeping your word, and that's all very important with the trust factor and everything else. So you brought everything together, which was very, very nice. Give me one takeaway that my listeners could use today. Give me just a takeaway.
Many people talk about, like, I think there's this manifestation trend. Manifest and it shall, and it'll happen. You have to vision it. Now, I'm a very strong believer in visioning, because it's a very substantial part of the Core 4. And that goes the same for the prep work I do, while going up the elevator into events, and when I work, either being the presenter in the keynote, or the offsite facilitator, or as part of the networking crowd. And I do create a vision and setting within myself of the kind of engagements I'd like to have. So I bring my best self into the room based on person I'd like to, the value I would like to provide. And I guess it's working.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's a good thing, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay. So, Nili, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, either use your services or learn about you, or just give me everything, how can somebody get in touch with you? And if there's anything else you want to add as kind of like a conclusion, please tell me.
My conclusion is that is not a conclusion. I think it's a blessing. I mean, we're kicking off the year together. And I truly hope that with dedication and work, of course, we will find ourselves more at ease and in some kind of a flow state mentally and with our business. That's my vision for 2025. And again, as I said, I would really, if people get curious, I think I respond personally to my LinkedIn profile. So I can give you all the phone numbers and emails and they're all, I shared them with you, but I like getting in touch personally on LinkedIn.
Okay, that's great. That's great, Nili. And I can't begin to tell you how I enjoyed this podcast, listening to you and everything that you're doing, and especially about your military background, because I really enjoyed that. But here, what? So I'm just going to sign off and tell everybody if they want to get in touch with you, please do so. She's a wealth of knowledge and she has a wealth of experience. And I just thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Michael, for having me and for spending, as you can see, the evening with me. And I look forward to sharing all of your insights and words and comments on LinkedIn with all of my followers really soon. I had a wonderful time. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, that's a wrap, folks. A huge thank you to our special guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or my website, michaelaforman.com. Remember, until next time, keep practicing, keep connecting, and keep building those relationships. This is Michael A. Forman signing off. Take care and happy networking.